Yeah. All right. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Stacy Nell. I'm the Executive Director of the Kansas African American Affairs Commission. We are here today for another Lunch and Learn, and I'm thrilled to be joined by Bryan Caskey. Hello.
Hey, good afternoon, Stacy. How are you?
Fantastic. I'm glad to be here. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and so I always ask people what did you have for lunch? I mean, lunch has been a couple hours ago now, but what did you have for lunch?
Well, quite frankly, mine was about 30 minutes ago. And unfortunately, it was a frozen dinner. Like it's been a little crazy today, so unfortunately, a very unappetizing frozen lunch.
Sometimes I've had those. Sometimes I've had those. And luckily today I had some leftover salmon from dinner, so I felt like I was
Oh,
living the
nice.
highlight. I know it's not always that. Some days it's a bag of popcorn. but
Unfortunately, I understand.
but I digress. So I'm gonna do a little background here on Mr. Caskey, because so our watch viewers can know who you are. Bryan Caskey is the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State. He has extensive experience in all facets of election administration. His responsibilities include corralling all the candidates who file for national and state office, as well as answering questions and providing statistical information concerning the election process. He assists with the coordination, education, research, and training of every county election officer in the state. Fantastic. And I those are some of the things that I definitely want to touch on. We are in an election year because every year is an election year, which is something that I
Yes,
try to impress upon people. But it's not one of the fancy, high-profile election years. But thank you for coming on to talk to me today. There's
absolutely.
lots of confusion. There's lots of noise surrounding how elections are run in this country and in Kansas. And I definitely love having the Secretary of State's office come on here, sort of to hear it from the horse's mouth. Can you just talk to us about how elections are run in Kansas and how you keep them secure?
Yeah, absolutely. So Kansas is what I call a bottom-up state. So the Secretary of State serves as the chief state election official for the state. And I'm appointed by the Secretary of State. I'm the state election director, so I oversee the state. However, Kansas has 105 counties, and in each county, there's a county election officer. For all but the largest four counties, that person is the elected county clerk. And so the county clerk actually runs elections in the state. They're the ones who establish polling places, purchase voting equipment, sends out poll workers and hires poll workers. They conduct the elections on election day. They count the votes. They report the votes and send them to us. But the counties are who actually do the work. And then, as I said, they're the largest four counties. They're appointed. All they do is elections, and those four people are appointed by the Secretary of State.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, so your office really does handle at the state level all of the election officers. So I want to talk a little bit about this notion that it's you oversee the state level oversees, but really elections are handled at that county level,
Yes, that is
right?
correct.
So it's the people, it's like our neighbors are the ones who are running these elections. It's not some scary person on high, but like it's our neighbors. So talk to us about poll workers. What is it that a poll worker does?
Absolutely. So in every county, the poll worker is who, on election day, that's who voters are going to interact with. So every county has some number of polling places. Some have, two or three, some have dozens. And that decision is made by the local county clerk. Our office has no say in how many polling places there are in any county. That's the county clerk who does that. And so at the county clerk, when you walk in the door at your polling place, when you walk in the door, um, you go up to the line to say that you're here to vote. You show your ID. You're showing that to a poll worker. In every county, those poll workers, I'll say volunteers. They're not volunteers because they do get paid, but these are your friends and neighbors, and so they will check your ID. They will make sure that you're on the list. They will hand you the correct ballot or direct you to the right voting machine. And so that's who every voter interacts with on election day.
So
Those are your friends and neighbors.
who can be a poll worker?
So anyone who is legally registered to vote in the state can be a poll worker.
Okay.
Except we have one big exception to that is our law allows every polling place to have one 16 or 17-year-old who would otherwise be eligible to vote except for their age. And so we've had that program for a few years now. We keep encouraging that. in an effort to lower our average age of our poll workers and to get young people excited and involved in the process. And so, yeah, it's literally all you have to do is be a registered voter and interested, and we in the counties would be happy to have you apply.
Well, that's fantastic. Okay, so here's the sort of the thing, the crux of why I wanted to have someone on from the Secretary of State's office. There's also a lot of chatter around mail-in ballots. Even today, as we're recording this, the president is talking about mail-in ballots. So one, I felt like it would be remiss for me to at least ask about that. And, not to put you on the spot, but let's talk about mail-in ballots, why they work, why people can or should perhaps, or at least not be afraid to use them, and how they're counted. So one, if you want to just say your piece about what potentially might be happening, at the national level, and then we can talk about the state level.
Right. So as it relates to what the president said today about that mail ballots are fraudulent and that he wants to get rid of them. That's in response to, a couple of press stories and off the cuff, remarks that he's made today. He has not issued an executive order on this yet. So I'm probably not going to say too much until I see what he actually means by what he says. And second, states run elections. And so, again, I would need to see what he said exactly in writing before I have much to say about his remarks. But as it relates to Kansas, we have used ballots by mail virtually since statehood. And in 1993, Kansas passed a law that allowed any voter in any election to vote by mail or to vote early prior to election day. At that time, we changed the word from absentee, which was used prior to that, to advance. To kind of note that in most people's eyes, absentee means you have to have an excuse. You're away from election, you're away from town, you have an illness or something like that. But in 1993, Kansas changed the law to allow anyone in any election for any reason. And so we are very comfortable with by mail voting. And I say that because we also have very good safeguards in place. You have to apply to have a ballot mailed to you every election. And so you have to turn in an application that has your name, your address, and your driver's license number or your social security number, and you have to sign it. We verify you are who you say you are with that signature before we ever send you a ballot. Then a ballot is mailed to you. You can then return the ballot to us by mail or in any drop box. Over 80 of our counties have drop boxes located that you can put the envelope into the drop box. Once we get the envelope back, you have to sign the outside of the envelope. And so we do the same thing. We look at the name, the address, and the signature on the envelope to verify it's what we have on file and what was on the application before we ever take the ballot out of the envelope and submit it for counting. So that happens literally in every election in every one of the 105 counties. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was going to say this notion that there's many steps in even getting a mail ballot. There's multiple steps, checks, I should say, checks and balances in knowing who's getting the ballot in the mail in the first place. And then I know from talking with the election officer in Johnson County. I reside in Johnson County. I know that afterward they even, if the signature is not like the signature they have on file, they will even contact people and say, hey, listen, can you please provide some additional information about whether this ballot is actually
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. Absolutely. So if for some reason the signature does not match in the views of the election office, they're required by law to make multiple attempts to reach out to the voter to explain the discrepancy or to submit additional information. And they do that from the time they receive the ballot back in the mail through whenever the county certifies the election the week after the election. So there's a election week is very busy, but that's one of the tasks in every county. They reach out to voters where the signature does not match to figure out what's going on. So it's not just a review and go, oh, that doesn't match, we're done with it. No, it doesn't match. And the counties have to reach out and try to ascertain why.
Okay. So that's sort of how the mail ballots are handled. We'll get to it, but I still want to talk about advanced in-person voting. And that is my preferred method of voting, is advanced in person. And I'm continually surprised to hear that that was only passed in 1993. I think it's one of those things that in my brain I'm like, oh, it's always been this way, but it has not always been this way. So, does the state level, or again, that's all county level in terms of how much time is advanced or when the polls are open, or how is that determined?
So when it comes to in-person advanced voting, that is strictly a county level decision. They report that to the state and we publicize it, but we do not set any parameters or rules around that. So in Johnson County, it's been wildly popular in Johnson County. And so I think they may have upwards of 12 to 16 different locations scattered throughout the county that are open anywhere from the week before the election through several days on either side of that. In other counties, they may only have one or two locations. In every county, the election office has to be one location. So you can always vote in person at the election office. But lots of counties have what we call satellite advanced voting locations where you can go. Again, that's strictly county discretion. There's money associated with that. You have to have enough poll workers to staff all those, but we trust the counties to make those decisions.
Fantastic. All right, so now I do want to talk about swing back again and talk about mail ballots. There's also much discussion. It's funny. I've always looked at these conversations with the Secretary of State's office is to sort of set the record straight in terms of, despite what you may hear in the interwebs, to actually hear from the Secretary of State's office. No, this is how it actually happens. This is how it runs. So we have the opportunity to have mail-in ballots. There's many checks and balances to make sure that the ballot gets to the correct person. There's advanced voting opportunities in person determined by the population of each individual county, how many are open. Johnson County has several locations, as you talked about. We arrive at election day. So one of the phrases that we hear often is election day is election day, or that whatever the count is at 7 p.m. is it. I know that oftentimes if a person is watching election results, the polls close at 7. Let me always say, if you are in line at 7 o'clock, please stay in line. You are allowed to vote.
Yeah, please do.
The polls close at 7, and at some point on the news, maybe even around 7:45, right? If it's people get their act together, there may be results that are put out. So talk to me about those 7:45 results versus those 9:30 p.m. results versus potentially those midnight results versus then you made reference to the canvas. So just talk about the timeline of what happens at 7 p.m. on election day.
Sure. And I want to say this up front. Election day is never election day. Like there's always, I will say, I've been involved in elections since the early 1990s. There are always votes that are counted after election day. So I'm going to go through that process. Okay, so first of all, polls close at 7 p.m. Counties will decide this, but normally you have all these polling places open throughout the county. And then you also have in-person advance voting, and then you have by mail advance. So basically there are 3 buckets of votes. By mail advance, counties can begin processing those prior to 7 p.m., except they cannot finish. They have to have at least 25 ballots that have not been tabulated yet. So at 7 o'clock, most counties will finish tabulating the by mail ballots that they have received to that point in time. And those generally are the first numbers you see on election night are by mail votes that have already been processed. And so at 7:45, those are the first results that are coming in. And one of the things we say so often on election night is that everything you see on election night is unofficial. Like the number on election night is never the final number. And I'll explain why here. So that's the first bucket. The second bucket is in-person advance. Those generally are then included in the count sometime in the first 2 or 3 counts as counties verify the numbers and post those. And then the third bucket are election day at the polling place. And so when the polling place closes at 7, the counties have several procedures. The polling places have several procedures they have to do. Then they transmit those results in person from the precinct to the county election office. Then those results are then tabulated and included in the official count. And then throughout election night, that's how numbers keep going up, is those three buckets all being put together. Now, what's not included on election night are any provisional ballots. A provisional ballot is issued to a voter anytime there's a question about the qualification of the voter. We've had provisional voting since the early 90s. I think it's wildly successful. It is designed to protect the voter. So if you walk in the door and your name's not on the polling place, we don't turn you away. We give you a provisional ballot. And then after election day, before the county meets to certify the results, we research, and by we, the counties research to see why it was provisional. Was the voter really not registered? Was there a mistake made? Was there a piece of information that was not submitted correctly? And so the counties review every provisional ballot and every election. And then the county board of commissioners in every county serves as the county board of canvassers who certify the actual election results. That takes place the week following election. So election day is Tuesday. The counties have the following week plus the Monday after that to meet at any point in time to certify the results. That number is the official number. So when they meet, they will look at all the vote totals that were reported on election night. Then they will review the provisional ballots and they will make a determination to count or not count. In an average election, 60 to 70% of provisional ballots are counted and included in the total. And then if for some reason there were any votes that had to be hand counted because the ballot didn't go through the optical scanner, then those are counted. Oftentimes those are counted the day after the election and included in the official total.
So I think this is key, because a lot of the confusion, a lot of the noise, a lot of the chatter is around this notion that numbers change. And there is frustration if a person has their person who's winning, and at some point it does this, and at some point it may even do that.
Yes.
But so let's talk about this. At 7:45, you mentioned, let me see if I understand it correctly. At 7:45, all of the mailed ballots that have arrived ahead of time, except for 25 of them, could be counted and processed. They process those last 25, and then each county does their little count and sends in their numbers to the county. Let's assume it's a county thing.
Yes.
If it's a statewide, because let's face it, we're coming up on, in 2026, there will be statewide elections for several offices.
Yes.
Finney County, the population is very different than Johnson County.
Yes.
So it's very possible that at 7:45, if you look at the total number of counted ballots at 7:45, that number may change wildly because there are people still in line in Johnson County, and that number hasn't just or that there's so many ballots to count. 9:00, as precincts close, as each individual precinct finishes its count of the tabulator, and those numbers are reported in. Throughout the night, more numbers get reported in. Again, a smaller county with a smaller population potentially could be finished much earlier than a larger population county. So that number will continue to change throughout that night, depending on what's going on. I know in presidential elections, let's see, in 2024, I know that there were reports coming out of Sedgwick County that there were lines, even at 7:00, that were an hour long of people still in line.
Yes.
So even just the people who are legitimately in line, because you're allowed to vote. If you are in line at 7:00, you're allowed to vote. Those numbers will continue to change. Okay. Then I think it's important to talk, and I'm going to give you a chance even to say it again about provisional ballots. Some people, and I know this for a fact, people are not aware that perhaps their precinct lines have changed. Because that's not something that gets a lot of it's not fancy. It's not a flashy thing to happen to have your precinct line change. If my precinct line changes, that church where I have voted for the past 15 years may not be where I should vote, because my precinct location may have changed, which means my polling location may have changed. So if I have not just plugged into the election system like I am and don't realize that my polling location has changed, I show up at the polling location that I've always gone to, and they say, wait a minute, you're not here. That's when they say, oh, your precinct line has changed, but you know what? You're here. You can cast a ballot here. That becomes a provisional ballot.
Yes.
Okay. So now talk to, and again, I want to give you a chance to say these things again because I feel as though there's so much confusion. I love having people come on and say that this is exactly what happens. So that provisional ballot, what happens to it at 7 p.m.?
Okay, so every polling place will have a stack of provisional ballots. They're counted and balanced so that the number of people who checked in at the polling place, we know exactly how many provisional ballots there should be. So we balance to make sure we have the right number. Then those are bundled together and sent to the central office. And they are kept there until the following day. Then starting the day after the election, the trained election staff, the permanent staff, will begin researching why is each one of these ballots provisional. And in the case that you mentioned, where a polling place has changed and the voter completely was unaware of it and went to the wrong spot. So they show up at the wrong polling place, unbeknownst to them. They're given a provisional ballot, then, but they are a registered voter in the county. They just went to the wrong place. Okay. So when the election office looks at that, they look and say, oh, hey, this person was a registered voter in the right county. They just voted at the wrong location. And so they will compare the ballot the voter voted with the ballot they should have voted, and everything in common will count, which in large counties, all of your nationwide races will count. All of your countywide races will count. Sometimes your vote for legislator may not count depending on the line change.
Right.
Sometimes it does, but at minimum, every countywide race will count. And so we call that a partial provisional. And again, like I said earlier, every election, it's between 60 and 70% of every provisional ballot is counted and included in the official totals. And we hear those questions a lot about, well, you never count those. That is not true. Every election, we count every single one of them. It doesn't matter if the unofficial election night returns are 99% to 1%. We're still going to count that because every voter's vote counts no matter what the range is. So I appreciate you asking me that, and that's exactly how we do it. So those decisions are made by the county election office, and then they present that information to the county board of canvassers, the
Okay.
commissioners, and
Mm-hmm.
they have them in stacks according to reason. Like, hey, this person moved within the county, this stack moved within the county, this stack wasn't registered, this stack didn't show ID, but they showed ID prior to the meeting of the canvassers, and the commissioners make the final call on count or not count. However, our office produces a chart. It's the provisional ballot chart where we cite, there's about 60 different scenarios where we give them the scenario and the law that addresses that. So we're trying to maintain consistency among the 105 counties so that when you have a provisional ballot in Johnson County, it's counted and reviewed the exact same way as it is in Finney County. So we do provide that sort of information to County Board of Canvassers. It's their decision, but we give them the information to be consistent throughout the state.
Okay. So these are always, okay. So then the county board of canvassers, because we're almost at the end of our timeline here. We're like a week out.
Yep.
And they have cured all the ballots. I'm fancy. I know that that's what they call it. They've cured all the ballots. They've checked all of the signatures. They verified that people had the wrong polling location, or like you said, they did show up with ID. They've done all the things. Now there's a number. This is the final official vote count. If it's a Tuesday, the 4th or something like that, when does that final official vote count come out?
So in each county, again, the county makes a decision. They can start certifying the Monday after the election through the second Monday after the election.
Okay.
They basically have a week and one day. And so when the county commissioners meet as the canvassers and they certify the numbers and say, these are the numbers, that's the official number used for county and local races. For national state races, that is not the final number. So the counties meet, they certify those numbers. Then for national state offices, they send those numbers to the Secretary of State's office. And then we tabulate all the numbers for all the national state offices. And then what's called the State Board of Canvassers meets by the 1st of the next month. So election day is November 4th. On December 1st, the State Board of Canvassers meets. The State Board of Canvassers is the governor, the attorney general, and the Secretary of State. And so in front of them, they have the election returns from all 105 counties. They have a summary sheet of the final number for every national state office. And so they meet, they certify, and that's the actual number we use for every election. So literally from November 4th, it's not done and official until December 1st.
And that's the way it has been, at least since 1993 when you started having advanced
So
in-person.
that process has been that way for at least 100 years, if not more.
Okay. I think that's important to stress that whatever you go to bed thinking on, if it's November 4th, whatever you go to bed thinking on November 4th may not be what actually winds up happening. And that if whatever you go to bed thinking on November 4th changes, that does not mean widespread voter fraud. That means provisional ballots. That means Finney County is quicker than Johnson County. That means that the process is just working its way through.
Right.
That means that people are doing their jobs and taking very close care. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I think it's that message cannot be said enough, and just that clearly.
Good.
So ballots. I think honestly, all the questions I have on my little agenda that I was planning on asking you pretty much covered in terms of how ballots are handled, how they're counted, how they are processed. I know that again, back to this mail ballot because that's sort of the hot topic. Kansas did pass the legislation to end the 3-day grace period. What I like to call not so much the 3-day grace period, but the 3-day ballot processing period. So now what is going to happen with this idea? What is going to happen?
Okay, so that law did pass this past session. It does not go into effect until January 1. So for this election this year, you can still mail your ballot with a postmark on or before Election Day and receive it in the election office by the Friday after the election and have it counted. So same rules apply. So I'm going to skip over the same rules and go to your question. So starting every election, starting January 1, every ballot by mail, every ballot has to be in the possession of the election office by the close of polls on Election Day, 7 p.m. So it's no longer postmarked, it's in the possession of the election office. So from my point of view, if I'm a voter who votes by mail, there's two things to look at. One, the day you get the ballot in the mail, you should probably turn around and send it back within a day or two. Like you used to be able to spend a little time. I know lots of people that like to have that time to wait and see if the candidates say anything at the last minute or to make their decision. I would strongly urge people to not waste any time because I'm not going to sit here and criticize the post office too much, but mail delivery times are not consistent. And the second thing, I think the most important thing is that 80 plus counties have drop boxes. And especially in the eastern part of the state, I think every county has at least one drop box, if not more. If I was a voter who voted by mail, put your ballot in a drop box because the minute it goes into a drop box, that's in the possession of the election office. So if you vote by mail and you get a ballot mailed to you, you have until 7 p.m. on Election Day to get that ballot into a drop box, or you can drop it off at your polling place, or you can drop it off at the county election office. So you have 3 places that you can drop that off. I think it's a great idea to put it in the possession of the election office, just so you know, A, that they have it, and B, we're not waiting on the post office to get it there on time.
I think that is the big question mark in the whole process now is that, and I love that you said that as soon as you get that ballot in the mail, fill it out and send it back. If you're a person who does need to mail it back, right? If there's whatever the issues, mobility issues, there's traveling issues, there's a college student out of state issues, whatever the issue is, as soon as you get it, fill it out, send it back. It is not enough anymore to say, oh, Election Day is November 4th. I can mail it on October 28th. Because if you mail it on October 28th, let's face it, it may not get there. You would think it's enough time to get there on October 28th, but anymore, it's hard to tell. So if you are a person who votes by mail, and I know a great many people do, and I like that you indicated that in Kansas, it's I can't like no fault or no for any reason.
Yeah,
No
any
excuse.
reason.
You can be a mail-in ballot person. Make sure that you figure out some way to get that ballot back to the election office, or get that on election day, get it to a polling place or a drop box. There are definitely places where you can do that. If a person does have mobility issues or issues with physically filling out their ballot, talk to that for people who have different abilities.
Yes. So any person can ask a third party, a friend, a neighbor, or relative, to assist them in marking and transmitting the ballot. So any voter has that ability. So if you vote by mail and have a ballot mailed to you, on the outside of the envelope, there's a section where the person providing assistance has to provide their information, their name, their address, their signature, and they have to swear that they are not providing any influence. They are marking the ballot exactly as directed by the voter. And so if you are a person with any sort of disability, you can have any other person provide assistance in marking the ballot and in transmitting the ballot, but that has to be reflected on the outside of the envelope.
Right. And so again, that's that extra measure of security to make sure that
Yes,
we know who's doing the ballot. Okay,
yes.
I think honestly, I think that I may be handling. I'm gonna go back, I'll check my questions I wanted to ask you. Um, yes, so I think that change does not take place for the municipal elections that are happening now in 2025. But I know I'm going to be talking about the change in how mail-in ballots are counted. Every time anyone asks me to say anything to a group of people, I'm going to say, please start to think now about how you're going to cast your ballot in
Yes.
2026. And oh, that's what I was going to say. I know in a great many places, if you go to the county election office, you can print off your ballot, or I think even on the Secretary of State's voter view. So, whereas I think part of the reason why some people appreciate having a mail in ballot is the ability to see who's on the ballot and do some research, as opposed to standing in front of the machine going, I don't know who this person is. As soon as your ballot is official, as soon as they know who's running, like for example, now we're past the primary. If you go to Voter View, which is the Secretary of State's voter lookup page,
Yep.
I can look up what my ballot is going to look like. I put in my name, my address. It knows, because you guys know where we are, it'll give me my ballot. So who my school board, who my county city council people are. That way, and it clearly says like draft, or it's
Sample.
watermarked. So I
Yeah, we
can't
put a sample
sample.
on it. Yeah.
So I can't use, that's not the official ballot. That's just a sample. It'll say sample, sample, sample. But you can print off what your ballot will be. Bring that home with you, mark it up, figure out who you're going to vote for. And I know in Johnson County, I can bring that in with me
Yes.
and then say, okay, this is the person that I've decided, this is the person that I've decided, and this is the person that I've decided. So that might be an opportunity or an option that does not use mail in ballots particularly, but still provides a voter with the opportunity to know what's on the ballot before they just walk in to vote, and gives the person time to consider, what is this candidate said, do I agree with this person. So there are ways that we can sort of work around the strictness of the ending of the processing period.
Absolutely. And I'm a big fan of Kansas Voter View. I mean, obviously, but it really is a good tool for the voter. I would say generally for a November election, October 1st is a good time when most counties have their sample ballots posted for a primary, somewhere around July 1st. Every county posts sample ballots for every voter. And so absolutely, you can look at it or you can print it out because it does say sample. You can take it with you. Just don't leave it behind. Like, you can like pull it out of your pocket and look. Just make sure you don't leave it behind. But absolutely, you can do that. And also, what that website does, Kansas Voter View, is if you vote by mail, you can track to some extent where your ballot is by mail. And importantly, you can see if the election office has it or not. So if you got your ballot by mail and you filled it out the first day and you put it in the mail on the 14th, you can see when the election office opened to receive that ballot. Now, it's not real time. So if it's the last day and you're unsure, don't be afraid to call and ask, but you can track and see when the election office received that ballot. So both of those options are there, and I strongly encourage people to use that.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time and answering all those questions. I'm over my self-imposed half an hour mark, but I think voting is something that as an American citizen, I take very seriously. I think it's a right that we have. It's something that, I mean, as a Black person, I don't take for granted. And I have always been very appreciative of the Secretary of State's office to come out here and explain the security. Really, the elections in Kansas are secure, and mail-in ballot can be secure. There are changes coming up, but there's ways that we can continue to even use mail-in ballots if that's what a person actually needs to.
Yep. Well, I'm a big fan of voters getting to have a choice. Like elections are for voters. Like we need voters to participate. Obviously, I feel strongly about this. So I really appreciate you having me talk. I will talk about elections anytime with anybody, anywhere. But we feel strongly in voters having choices and then voters making the decisions. We want people to vote.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next time at our next Lunch and Learn. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.